I believe we have been called by God and we've been chosen for this hour. We are no better than anyone else. We're no better than any other denomination, except we have been called by His name.
And now will you please pray with me? Our God and our deliverer, your boundless love and infinite mercy transforms fear into courage and anguish into joy. You infuse darkness with light and despair with hope. Thank you for intervening in Scotty's darkest moments, delivering him from the bonds of hopelessness and discouragement, and filling him instead with a peace and joy that come from you alone. Fill us all with peace and joy by your Spirit, and spur us toward active and jubilant participation in your vast kingdom. This we ask in Christ's holy name. Amen. And now, Shirley Hoekstra, our Vice President of Student Life, will introduce our guest.
For how many of us does this resonate? Our lives don't always work out to our ideal scenario. When Captain Scotty Smiley deployed for Iraq in 2004, he knew it might cost him his life. He never thought that it might also cost him his sight. All that changed when 6 months later, on April 6, 2005, injuries from a suicide bomb almost killed him, and shrapnel pierced his eyes and severed his optic nerve. Captain Smiley's world went dark permanently, and in many ways, there were other effects. Captain Smiley speaks candidly about how it was a dark time for him spiritually, and this for a man who was a Sunday school teacher while a cadet at West Point and was called the Oak by fellow cadets. Friends and family rallied for him, and at the ceremony for awarding the Purple Heart, Lieutenant General Van Antwerp had the audacity to say, "We'll see what God has in store for your life. The one thing we know is that it's going to be good and it's going to be exciting." Sure, thought Captain Smiley. Fighting to stay in the Army, his world has not remained hopeless. Since the accident, Captain Smiley has amazed even those who knew him well with his courage and resolve. Scotty has surfed in Hawaii, skied at Vail, climbed Mount Rainier, completed a triathlon, taught leadership at West Point, and earned his MBA. He is the Army's first active duty blind officer, and he said, "I've learned that you can see with so much more than just your eyes." Captain Smiley has received, in addition to the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star. He was named Soldier of the Year by the Army Times, Best Outdoor Athlete by ESPN, and was awarded the prestigious MacArthur Leadership Award. Following today's presentation, Captain Smiley will be available in the West Lobby. Be sure also to pick up a copy of the inspiring memoir, Unseen Hope. I've read it. It's good. I already bought 2 copies. Calvin College is grateful to GMB Architects and Engineers for underwriting today's presentation. Please join me in welcoming Captain Scotty Smiley.
Thank you. Not necessary. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm honored and humbled to be here this morning, this afternoon. I apologize. Thank you, Calvin College, Michael Leroy. Again, it's an honor to be here. The underwriters, Shirley, a very warm welcoming, and Tricia, wonderful prayer. Again, it's awesome to be able to share my story and a little bit of my life to hopefully give everyone here inspiration and motivation to know that there is hope and there is a reason to live. So let's get started. Imagine yourself walking with me up Mount Rainier. Now, granted, I don't think all of us, 1,000 of us, would be climbing at the same time, but just imagine individually you're with me on Mount Rainier. It's a beautiful sunny day in July. The sun shining, sparkling off and glistening off the ice and the snow. The birds are chirping. Little squirrels run across the trail as we begin to trudge up the mountain. Go over pebbles. It then turns to rock, making our steps carefully but consistently. Quickly, we enter the snow field, chicaning our way up the mountain, crisscrossing back and forth. It's a very easy climb. We then hear water sprinkling ahead and stop before crossing Pebble Creek. Luckily, none of us fall in the creek because wet feet mean cold feet. And we continue the climb up the mountain. We finish the climb and spend the night up at Camp Muir, the last base camp before the summit, which Mount Rainier summits at 14,410 feet. We spend the next day practicing being tied in together in 4-man teams for the summit the following day. As the day concludes, we're all sitting around the campfire, warming our hands, warming the snow to make water for ourselves. The lead climb guide briefs the route. As he concludes, he says, "All right, everyone, get some sleep. We'll be waking you up at 9, and we'll wake you up at 11, and we'll be climbing at 12." So I'm pumped. It's about 9 o'clock at night, and heading back to the tent with my friends, and I'm like, "Wow, guys, we're going to get well over 12 hours of sleep." My friends respond with that same answer as they laugh at me and say, "Scotty, no, it's alpine sleep." I'm like, "Huh? What's that?" 11 o'clock tonight, and we'll get climbing at midnight. Well, yeah, I thought the same thing, and I unfortunately got a little less than 12 hours, than obviously less than 12 hours of sleep and less than 2 hours of sleep. But fortunately, we couldn't have asked for a better evening to climb. There was no wind, the stars were out, the moon was shining, we all had lamps on our foreheads to see where we were going, and we began the climb. Almost every hour and a half to 2 hours, we'd stop, take our backpacks off, sit on them, and rest our legs as we'd eat some chocolate and drink some Gatorade, get some nutrition in us. Well, after summiting through Disappointment Cleaver, a huge rock face on this mountain, I realized my legs were dead. My calves were burning, my quads, my core, my arms. I was exhausted. And I also realized when I got to the top of that mountain, I was only halfway there because I had to climb all the way back down. And I told the lead climb guide as we were sitting on our backpacks, as he asked me, "How do you feel?" I looked up and I said, I don't think I can make it. I don't think I can make it to the top. Well, I rewind several years earlier to say I was raised in a very large home. 3 brothers, 3 sisters. It was war. We had a blast, though. The competition, me being the 3rd oldest, 2 older brothers, I realized very quickly if I cried first, it usually wasn't my fault. But that competition inspired me to better myself academically, physically, and spiritually. Pushing myself in wrestling, football, and as my high school years started to come to a close, I wanted to attend college. And I chose one of the best schools in the world when it comes to leadership, and that was the United States Military Academy, located in West Point, New York. Now, I'm from Washington State, and when I told my mom that, tears began to flow. 3,000 miles away, how could I do that? How could I make that decision? Well, in my heart, I knew it was the right thing to do. I wanted to lead others, be a leader in the community. As I got on that one-way flight after graduating to West Point, New York, I was a basket of tears, leaving the comforts of my home, leaving my mom and dad, 3 meals a day, my laundry being done for me, and my high school sweetheart. How could I leave her? I was sad. And little did I know, my life started to change. The second the plane landed, got in a car, wished my way up to West Point. Was quickly introduced to the Army. where my head was shaven, a gray t-shirt was put on me, black shorts halfway up my thigh, socks up to my knees, and loafers. I looked like a dork. But I was fortunately comforted because everyone else looked the same. And the stresses of life just began to pour down on me. We had duties every day, waking up early to deliver the newspaper to the upperclassmen, memorize the front page of the newspaper. I'm not sure why we had to memorize it. I thought they were all in college and they knew how to read. But I guess it was a way that they could ensure that we were reading too. We had to memorize the days until the Army beat a school, beat the Navy, which we haven't beaten them in several years, side note. We just had duties after duties after duties, memorization after memorization, and it began to make a toll on me. I remember delivering laundry. It was awesome because the military academy did our laundry for us, but we as freshmen, or I take that back, we weren't freshmen. We were new cadets. And new cadet, if any of you don't know, is a rank. And we were told it is not a cadet. A new cadet is a new cadet. And our rank was not a cadet, it was below a cadet, and we were actually ranked underneath the commandant's dog. I kind of just, a little side note just to let us know how much they thought of us, that they thought of us less than the commandant's dog. But fortunately, we were blessed to be ranked above the naval goat, so we had a little bit of self-worth. But so just the stresses of life, and I remember going down the hallway, with this big pile of laundry, delivering to some upperclassmen that I didn't know who they were, what their job was. And, I'm this 210 pounds twisted steel sex appeal guy, like, I'm a stud, and at least in my mind, I think I'm a stud. And this this junior stops right in front of me. He says, "Halt, new cadet, where are you going?" "I don't know, ma'am." "I'm not a ma'am." "Yes, sergeant." I'm not a sergeant." "Yes, cadet sergeant." "Where are you going?" "I don't know." "Is that one of your 4 responses?" And I just, "No, man." And I just start crying. And I'm this stud, just like whimpering and whining. And I'm sure after she picked her jaw off the ground in shock and awe, said, Stop. You need to understand why you're here. You need to understand that this is a purpose, that we have a purpose behind this. You need to understand more so that the small, insignificant stresses of life we're placing on you are nothing in comparison to what you're going to go through in 47 months when you graduate. Because men and women's lives are going to be put on the line, and you're going to be in charge of them. And so she, in essence, said, go back to your room, gather yourself together, and try again. And so I did. I'm sure still weeping. I sat down in my chair, and everything was taken away from me. My mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my girlfriend, everything, except one thing, God. See, I was raised as a Christian boy, and being raised as a Christian and giving my life to God at a very young age, I began to understand that life was a little bit more important than just myself. I remember going to Sunday school, going to church Wednesday nights, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. I always thought it was Sunday. Being told that I needed to read the Bible. I remember heading outside. Bye, Mom, I'm going to go play with Brian, Brad. Stop. Did you read your Bible? Of course, the answer was usually no. Go downstairs, read your Bible. And I'm sure at those times, it's my interpretation of a chapter was more like a verse, but, semantics. But I began to understand that life was more important than just myself, and that my purpose was to glorify and to praise God. And so as I sat in that West Point room, all alone, I knew that I had God. And I opened up the Bible to the book of Philippians, where Paul is talking about, I've been beaten, I've been well off. I've been tired, I've been well rested. I've been hungry, I've been well fed. But I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I just thought of that. I was like, man, if Paul was seeing me right now, this would be embarrassing. Like, delivering a pile of laundry and breaking me down. But I realized that God had me there for a reason, and God had me there for a purpose, though I didn't know what it was. And so I made a decision to stay at the academy, to better myself. And as the months went by, I joined Officer Christian Fellowship, a Tuesday night service in which we praise and worship and then studied the Bible as classmates. I taught Sunday school my junior and senior year to the second grade. I remember building this amazing relationship with Andrew Harris, this little boy I called Drew. He's like, my name's not Drew, it's Andrew. I was like, I know, but Drew's a tough name, isn't it? He's like, yeah. It was just awesome to see the results of me staying and the positive impact that I was able to make. And as that woman had told me several months earlier, those 47 months at the military academy flew by. I was quickly married to my beautiful high school sweetheart, which we stayed together through those 4 amazing years at the military academy, and was posted at Fort Lewis, Washington, my first duty station. And upon arriving to that duty station, I received 45 men in which I was in charge of. And as that woman described, it was stressful. We had weapons. I had an M4, about that long, 210 rounds, grenades, microphones, a 50 caliber machine gun. The bullets were like this big. And yes, guys, it was awesome. It was a blast. But the stresses continued. Early mornings, late nights. And after being there only a couple months, I received orders to be deployed to Mosul, Iraq for 12 months, where I knew I was going to have to leave my family, my friends, to protect the Constitution of the United States. And it was hard. And coming home and telling my beautiful bride of only a few months that I was leaving to Mosul, it was hard. And I remember her asking me, well, do you really have to go? And I was like, well, I don't even know where Mosul is. So looking it up, I found it was the Nineveh province. And if any of you don't know where Fort Lewis is, it's right on the Puget Sound, a huge body of water. And I knew the last thing I was going to do was to tell God, no, I'm not going to Nineveh. Some of you know how it ended up the first time. And, through prayer and just, understanding that God had me here for a reason, I went. And after only being married about 7 months, I deployed to Mosul, Iraq with my men. And our job was to rebuild the Iraqi government, rebuild the Nineveh province. And it was awesome to see what we did every day. Helping rebuild schools, helping redistribute gasoline, electricity, helping rebuild the Iraqi army and Iraqi police force, securing them. It was amazing to see the work that we were doing. Building parks, handing out soccer balls. It was so cool to see what men and women were doing for other people and just to protect our government. But the insurgents, the terrorists, attacked us every day, whether it's through improvised explosive devices, bombs in the road, underneath the road, rocket-propelled grenades, being shot at by snipers, mortared. It was sad. 6 of my men were seriously injured and had to be redeployed back to America. My company commander, Captain Bill Jacobson Jr., was killed on December 21st, his 10-year anniversary to his wife, in the Mosul mess hall bombing with 21 other men and women in the army. It was tragic. And it was times like that I had to really think, am I here for a reason? Am I here for a purpose? And the only reason and thing that I could think of was to bring God glory, to continue to read through my Bible, to continue to pray with my men, because they were thinking the same exact thing. And as the months quickly continued to fly by, being deployed 6 months, I was in front of a suspicious vehicle. The lower end of the car the back end of the car was a little lower than the front. The shocks could be out, the suspension could be gone. But we had received intelligence that there was a suicide car bomb out there. Well, the rules of engagement say you can't just shoot someone because you're scared, because they look scary, so I shot them. Well, congratulations, you're under arrest. It was tough. And men and women are making these decisions every day, even now in Afghanistan, all over the world. Well, I knew the best thing to do was to cordon him off, not allow him to escape. I, in my Stryker vehicle, 8-wheeled vehicle, parked just 30 yards to his south. Nothing in between us. I was facing east, he was facing west. parked 2 other strikers in front of his vehicle, about 100 yards away, so he couldn't escape. I looked at him. Head was cleanly shaven, face was cleanly shaven, just looked like an innocent, nice guy. Gray shirt down to his sleeves, and a silver Opal was the kind of car he was driving. And I yelled at him to get out of his vehicle. He looked over his left shoulder, raised his hands off the steering wheel, and shook his head no. I yelled at him again. He responded with the same action, then let his foot off the brake. That's when I raised my M4 up to my shoulder, fired 2 rounds in front of his vehicle, then boom, my world went black. I woke up 2 weeks later in Walter Reed Army Medical Center. My world had not just gone physically black, being blinded the rest of my life, but it also went spiritually black. I no longer believed in God. I no longer believed in what had sustained me through the hardships, the trials, and struggles, because God, I knew, allowed something to happen to me for a reason I didn't understand and didn't even want to comprehend. My wife, by my bed every day, praying with me, reading the Bible to me, friends and family, always nearby, were there to support. But I didn't want that support. I didn't want to believe. I remember one day my best friend coming in the room and asking me to pray. I said, no, I don't know how to pray. I don't think I know God. And the room went dead silent. And my wife, knowing of my injuries, knowing that I'd be blind, she said, I was perfectly fine with being married to a disabled person, a blind person, but she had big issues with being married to someone who didn't know the Lord. And she went back to her room and got on her knees and began to pray. But it wasn't just those prayers that turned my life around. It was a decision that I had to make. And there was people that try to come in every day to visit me. Toby Keith, he's a country singer, want to come say hi. No, I don't want to see him. Gary Sinise, an actor. He was Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. No, don't want to see him. 3-star, 4-star generals. No, I don't want to see any of them. And one day, my wife came into the room and said, Scotty, Andrew wants to say hi. And I knew it was Andrew Harris, a boy who I had taught Sunday school years earlier, that he had driven with his dad from West Point, New York, to come and say hi to me. That I realized that I could still live life, that a little boy still looked up to me, that people, and that God could still use me in an amazing way. Though I didn't have a clue how, if a little boy still looked up to me and still wanted me to be, and looked at me as an example, I knew that God had me here for a reason. But I had to make a choice. I first had to forgive the man who blew himself up. And it was tough. Blowing up into 1 million pieces with his car, it was tough to make. But I knew it was the right decision, because for me to be fine with the life that I'm living now and living today, I don't think I'd be able to be here if I hadn't forgiven him. But most importantly, I had to ask God to forgive me for denying him. And once I made that choice, and once I made that decision, I was able to move forward in life, and begin to change in a positive way. Now trust me, the light just doesn't click on. Sometimes it does for others. For me, yes, I made that decision, but I was still blind, still going through other physical ailments. I still had to live life every day and put a smile on my face. As I quickly recovered, rebuilding the relationship with my wife, rebuilding the relationship with God, that recovery quickened. As I only spent a little less than 2 months at Walter Reed, was pushed off to Palo Alto, California to attend the Blind Rehabilitation Center. And as the medical doctor said, you need to get used to being blind. because it's not something that's going to go away. So as I learned to use a stick, learned to use a computer, learned to rebuild my relationship with my wife because I don't think I was still nice to her. I think there was a time in which she told me, Scotty, I love you very much, but I do not like you at all. And that's tough to hear. And I guess the one good thing about it is I still had to hold her elbow to get around. So she wasn't going far. But it was just times like that in which I realized I still needed to better myself, still needed to better my life. But that independence in me, the person who I was, the stud who I thought I was, that 210 pounds of twisted steel and you know the rest, still wanted to be that person. And I remember wanting to go to the gym and lift weights and be the stud that I was. And I wanted to go there by myself and get back by myself. And in all honesty, it wasn't hard to get from the blind center to the gym. You go out the door, they had little mats in the sidewalks so the blind people could see that it was an intersection. You take a left, cross the little alleyway, hop on the alley on the far side hop on the sidewalk on the other side of the alley, take the first right on the sidewalk, take the first left, and then boom, the gym's 15 yards ahead. It was very easy, less than 200 yards away from the blind center. Was I had lifted weights and got my swole on. Unfortunately, I hadn't drinking water. The day had concluded. It was about 5:15 in the afternoon, 95-degree, dry Palo Alto sun. I knew the blind center was only a few minutes away, where air conditioner would hit me in the face, water down my throat. It was going to be awesome. I headed out the door, took my first right, took my first left, crossed the alleyway. I was happy. Knew I did a great job. All I was looking for the mat. No mat. No mat. Increase the arc of my stick a little wider. Maybe I missed it. Still no mat. Then I realized, I'm lost. And like you all, when you're lost, you backtrack. Well, let me tell you, when a blind guy's lost, it's a blind guy backtracking. I stayed lost. And I now had stopped sweating, being dehydrated, my mouth was dry, no one to ask where I was, everyone had left for the day. I threw my stick down in anger and just cried out to God, why? Why me? Why this life? Because I still didn't understand what purpose God had. And as someone, after the minutes passed by, quickly found me, it was that question, why, and quickly, over the months, came to fruition that it wasn't the why that I should ask. It shouldn't be asked to God, but it should be what? What, God? What are you going to use me for? How are you going to use me? What are you going to use me with? Because those questions quickly needed to be answered because I was now going through the medical evaluation board. Being faced with the decision, did I want to stay on active duty? Did God have a purpose for me on active duty in the Army? And as my wife and I prayed about it, still not knowing what or how God would use me, we made a decision to stay on active duty, to do something that hadn't been done before, a blind Army officer. And we did get negative feedback, but the majority of feedback was awesome. And it just shocked me to understand that people looked up to someone who had the fortitude to fight on, to fight for something in which I believed in, the selfless service, the sacrifice. And I was going to be that example. And as my jobs changed administratively, I wanted to continue to impact soldiers. Impact soldiers just as I had positively been impacted at the military academy. I asked someone, hey, do you think I could teach? Granted, I hadn't gone to the career course, mandatory for someone going to the military academy to teach. I hadn't had a company command, mandatory for someone to teach there. And the answer came back, sure. Just go get an MBA. Ooh. So I told my wife, excited and elated, honey, they said yes. What school do I go to? Well, I picked Duke University to attend the Fuqua School of Business. And as my wife and and our little boy moved to North Carolina, I realized school didn't get any easier, especially being blind. Imagine yourself in statistics class, as some of you have taken, financial accounting, economics, leadership. I mean, you have an instructor. All right, as you can see here, with this equation, when you move this to here and this to here, you get this equation. Everyone says, yeah, no, I don't understand. But it's those same stresses of life that I had already been through, that if I relied on God, that I could still do all things through Christ who strengthened me, that I could still develop and still succeed, but I had to seek for help. I couldn't be that independent person that I'd always wanted to be and was still trying to be. I had to be part of a group. I had to get assistance. And it wasn't just that assistance, but it meant late nights. I'm sorry, students, sometimes you still have to pull late nights, early mornings. Sometimes you don't get a night. But it's that practicing and that pushing on that those 2 years flew by, and I was asked to be the graduation speaker. And it was awesome to stand in front of my class and an audience and to share my faith and what had happened to me. But most importantly, how God had allowed the things to occur and to see the blessings that had come to fruition. And as I graduated, moved up to West Point, New York, my alma mater, to be an instructor at the military academy. And trust me, the 4 years I had spent there, it was a place I never wanted to see again. And I was lucky. I never had to see it again. But to stand in front of students, to give them examples that I had had from high school, junior high, college, and definitely the military, gave me the ability to teach them how to better their lives, to learn from my mistakes, and to not make the same mistakes. And if they do make mistakes, to learn from them, to learn and to be better, and to better their lives constantly and continuously. And that's what I'm even doing today, is teaching at Gonzaga University in the ROTC department, where I'm educating, training, and inspiring the cadets to be commissioned officers, to learn from the mistakes that I had made, to learn from what I had done, and to be the best that they can be. And that brings us back to Mount Rainier. I started off when I was on Mount Rainier, and I'm blind on this hike. That same punk, independent person was the same independent person on that mountain, not wanting to pay attention to anyone, thinking I can do it all myself. But most importantly, I forgot to trust in God. Was it His will that I even climbed the mountain? Well, don't care. I'm going to climb it anyway. Well, I saw where that attitude got me. Frail, quivering, dead tired. But it was that Bible verse that I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me that came back in my mind. It was the prayers that came, but it was also depending upon other people, surrounding myself with those who knew what they were doing, that they finally enabled and assisted me in climbing 13 hours that day to finally summit a little after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I honestly felt like I was on top of the world. I had accomplished something that I never thought I could have accomplished with eyesight, and I had done it blind. And so in closing, it's not what we can't do. It's not what has held us down. It's not the trials and struggles that stop us or keep us down. But it's what we do as a result. It's not asking God why. It's asking God what. It's asking God how. And it's through that, and it's through those struggles and through those trials that we all, if we work together, we all can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Thank you so much.
Scotty has agreed to take some questions and answers from the audience and from people at the remote sites. So if you have a question card that you filled out already that you would like to have collected, please feel free to just hold that up ushers will come and grab them from you and bring them up to the stage. We'll get started with a question that has been emailed in from a student. And that question is, what have you gained from losing your sight?
What I've gained from losing my sight is I look at everyone here and you're all beautiful. I don't know if the laugh agrees with me or disagrees, but I look at everyone as equal. To an extent, just as God looks at us. He looks at our heart. He looks at our minds. And many times the social network of America and many cultures and societies, that first impression really dissolves what people think of you or creates what people think of you. And for me, I don't have that. I look at everyone as equal. I look at everyone as the same. And I think that's what's really benefited. And I think with that, I can come into a situation or a room or anywhere and be at the same level. And I think that's what's really been a blessing for me is just looking at everyone as equal and then working as hard as I can to build the team.
All right, and another email from a student. You talked about this a little bit in your speech, but they would like to know, how did you, as a military leader, deal with the fact that you'd have to be dependent on other people for certain things?
That's the hardest part. And, you're right, I did talk about it, it's that independence and dependent that's a constant struggle for all of us. We want to be independent. We want to do things our own. We want to say, no, Mom, Dad, I got it. No teacher, instructor, I'm smart, I'm educated. It's what we all want and all desire. But if we do that, we'd be 8.5 billion independent people lost, not knowing where we are, not knowing what we're doing. And it's that dependence upon other people that has enabled me to do what I've done today, to be able to climb Mount Rainier, to be able to surf, to be able to ski. There's no way I could have done any of it by myself. To get an education, there's no way I could have possibly done it by myself. Getting a tutor, it's what I needed. And as humbling as it was to be the only master's student with a tutor in class, it's what made me successful and it's what enabled me to get that degree. And so that dependence and independence is always a fight in us. But it's what God says, Christ is through Christ who strengthens us. That for God so gave the world his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. And it's like, I got to depend upon someone? And it's that dependence that enables us to be who we are. And it's that dependence upon God that enables us to be the people, the organization we are, and do the things that we do today. And so as humbling as it may be or as it may sound, I realize that I have to depend upon other people. I have to get a ride to work. I have to get someone to help me on my bicycle. Like, I help my children ride their bicycles, but those are called training wheels. My training wheel is another person. And so as humbling as it may be, I still fight it. I still fight the dependence struggle, but it's through dependency that we can accomplish things, and it definitely depends upon God.
All right, and a student would also like to know, what have you learned about forgiveness through this experience, and is forgiveness a one-and-done type of thing, or is it an ongoing process? A student would like to know, is forgiveness a one-and-done type of thing, or is it an ongoing process, and what have you learned about forgiveness through your experience?
Well, I wish forgiveness was a one-time shot. Whole all, be all, I forgive all, just as God on the Christ on the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. It's tough. For me, forgiving that man who blew himself up meant that I would forgive him wholly, not partially, not carry this little thimble of dark, deep closet of hatred, anger, and resentment, but wholly. I was fine with the life that I've been given, that God has blessed me with. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, there's struggles. Yeah, I can't see my beautiful bride, my beautiful children, the sunset. That's what has happened to me. But to forgive meant that I'm set free, that I can live with happiness, with a smile on my face. And it was only through that forgiveness that I really believe that I'm here today and I'm doing what I'm doing today. But it's not just forgiveness that one time. It's constant forgiveness. And a student asked me a question, what's after forgiveness? Well, there's change. If I'm asking someone to forgive me, well, I better not do that same thing the next day, 5 minutes later. Like, it makes that forgiveness pointless, purposeless, and unfortunately, you'll probably cause more animosity. And so it's changing. And that change may take some of us a day, a minute, or years, but it's focusing on that change. And if we are forgiving others, it's also us ensuring that change is done. Because if someone's hurt us, put it at the depths of despair, sometimes those are relationships that you may have to take a break from, take some time off from, and sometimes, unfortunately, cut. Because we have to surround ourselves with people who understand and are not harmful and not hurtful. And I think that's the important part of forgiveness. It's constant, it's consistent, but you have to create change, and that change is what results in living a free life.
Thank you. Having experienced it personally, what would you say are the biggest misconceptions Americans have about the Iraq War?
That we were after their oil. No, I think a lot of misconceptions is why we went in there, the purpose behind us going in there. And that's why I'm glad I'm not the president. That's why I'm glad I'm just a soldier who follows directions and follows orders. That when I'm told by the commander-in-chief to deploy, I deploy with a smile on my face, and I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability. When I got to Iraq, our job was to rebuild the government. And as hard and as sometimes pointless and meaningless as it may have seemed, I didn't see the greater good. And sometimes I did. That we were building a secure Iraq in which was a stable government in the Middle East. Because the Middle East does not have a lot of stable governments, or at least governments in which we in America trust. And so it's that government in which we were rebuilding, in which we were maintaining to ensure that the evil regime that was there wouldn't cause harm to our allies and wouldn't cause harm to us. And so I think those are a lot of the misconceptions that we have, is we've built an amazing government there that constantly needs to grow, just as our government needs to continually grow. And it's that government that we supported and that we continue to rebuild and are continually supporting to rebuild.
All right, we have a question that came in over Twitter, and the person would like to know how you were able to ski blind.
So snow skiing blind, I didn't think it could be done either. And it's really cool. Just Foresight Ski Guide was the organization that I went through in Vail, Colorado. And you just hop on your skis. They hold your pole up to the chairlift, hop off the chairlift either to the right or the left, and you hope you don't wreck. And then once you get to the top of the slope, they say, all right, the slope's that way, it's at this angle, and they say, go ahead. It's trust me, as the laughs are being heard, it was scary, but it's funny that it's very simple. Because I'm totally blind, they ski right behind me, about 3 yards behind me, and just say, and right, and left, and right, and left. And I just weave my way down the mountain. And though I don't know it until it was told to me that I'm actually going around skiers, I'm going around trees, as scary it may be for some people that guy can't see, I was confident. But all in all, it's just a phenomenal workout, just to enjoy God's creation and just to be out in the snow. So it's fun.
Great. This is a question from one of our remote sites in California, and the person would like to know, of all the accomplishments you've had since you've been blind, which one makes you the most proud and why?
I honestly think being a husband, loving my wife to the fullest, giving her my heart, giving her my love, is the most special thing that God, just as He gave Adam Eve, my wife is the best thing that I've been blessed with. Her support, her love, and I sometimes take advantage of it and don't tell her thank you or don't take her out enough. Men, take note. But that's the joy that I have, is loving a beautiful woman who loves me so hard, so much, and who has blessed us with 3 beautiful boys. And I think that's what I've loved the most, is just being a husband and being the best husband that I can be.
Question from a student now. Do you ever wish to gain your sight back?
Do I wish to gain my sight back? I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I think, all in all, if I had my sight back, I'm afraid that my life may be different, that I may not be able to be used as God has used me and is using me. And if that's the case, I don't want my sight back, that I'm perfectly fine with the life in which God has given me, though it may cause me struggles, trials, interesting conversations with my wife, that God has blessed me, and that my eyesight being taken from me is a window and a door in which God can and has used me. And so in the end, I don't think I'd want my eyesight back because of the blessings and the joy that God has given me.
What has been the hardest adjustment for you and your family since becoming blind?
I think just my dependence. I'm in the Army, and if anyone, I know we have some ROTC students here who I'm sure love PT at 6 o'clock in the morning, which means like a 5 o'clock wake up, that you have to get there by 5:45 to do extra training for the sake of just extra training. That the hours are very difficult on my family, very difficult on my wife, because I have to be where I have to be, and it's a difficult process to ensure that we all are on board, and all are on board is in, if I have a meeting, I have to be there. And I think that's what's really hard, is the dependence upon her, dependence upon that I put on other people, but realizing the greater good that has come of being blind. My family are in total support and continue to love each other and continue to push forward.
This question comes from one of our remote sites here in Michigan, down in Hastings, and the viewer would like to know, do you experience the presence of God differently in your blindness?
Yeah, I do. I do feel the presence of God differently, and every one of us has a different relationship with the Lord, and closeness, deepness. And for me, when I did have sight, it wasn't just maturity, but it's the understanding of the Holy Spirit and how God could work in my life and what He could do in my life. And there's embarrassment. Do I pray in public? Do I pray in a restaurant? Do I do this? Do I do that? And that's all natural as humans. But being blind has taken a lot of that away, that I can feel free to pray in public, and I'm not on a box yelling at people at football games by any means, but I'm living my life to its fullest as a Christian, and it's the blindness in which doesn't make me embarrassed to say what I want to say and to do what I need to do based off of what God has called me to do. So for me, that relationship has deepened and has strengthened, and my dependence upon God, because I am blind, has become so much more, and I look forward to constantly building that relationship and growing closer to God, in which I can quickly see Him one day.
Following up on that a little bit, you talk about how you feel very open to talk about God. Are you able to do so in the classroom, and is that accepted in the military?
Well, that's a different story. I am in the Army. I wear a uniform. I'm a captain. So the Army frowns upon me preaching in uniform. So at prayer breakfasts, in areas and situations in which I'm told it's fine, then I'm more than happy to share my faith. And whether it be in a closed room, in counseling sessions, even with warriors in transition who are struggling and going through many of the same trials and tribulations that I had gone through, I'm more than happy to share my faith. I'm more than happy to give all, and my all is God, with them. And so it is sometimes frowned upon, but I'm very ginger in what I say and when I say it. But I always live as a true, and attempt to live as a true example of Christ.
We got a comment here from someone who was listening to your speech and wondered if you wanted to respond to it. She writes, "My son was killed in Iraq. I'm still trying to forgive those responsible for his death, and thank you for helping me forgive."
Yeah. No, it's hard that men and women are still dying every day. We may not see in the news a lot of men and women were killed and taken from us in Iraq, and more so, many are still being taken in Afghanistan, and there are still trials around the world in which our freedoms people are trying to take those away from us, and I apologize, and I'm sorry to hear of her child's death, and it's standing beside each other. It's people of faith that stand beside each other and comfort and secure and provide that security for those who have lost. And though the mourning process is different for every one of us, we have to understand that God has us here on this earth for a reason. And if we're standing up for that, and we're standing up because of for that reason, we will be taken. But being next to God is better than being here, and it's just that faith that we have to continually have. And again, I love and support all who have given so much and who are continually giving even today.
All right, on a little bit lighter note, we have a student who wants to know if you hope to one day have a self-driving car.
Google is producing a lot of cool things. I'm really interested in just their internet, making it more accessible for me reading it. But yeah, that would be phenomenal to have a self-driving car. It would take a lot of stress. Well, it would probably add a little bit of stress to my wife. I take that back, knowing that I'm hot rodding by myself. If I could say that, if I could go the speed I'd want to do, I think I would love it. But yeah, I think it offers so much for independence, for not just blind people, but for disabled individuals who, whether it be a paraplegic, quadriplegic, different issues in which prevent people from driving. It's an amazing accessibility, and as the technology in this country and around the world continues to develop, it gives us more independence. But again, it's that independence in which we all want and we all desire, and which have to be careful with it. We're still focused on what our purpose here on earth is about and for.
All right, we have time for one more question yet, and then Scotty will be in the West Lobby signing books and available to greet people after the speech if you'd like to meet him there. But the final question is, you've done a lot of challenging things since you have become blind. What is the next big challenge that you would like to master?
Man, today has enough problems of itself. I just try to better my life every day, spiritually, mentally, and physically, that as issues and fun times come, I don't want to step down because something seems too hard or something seems too difficult. And so as struggles or issues or situations occur, I have to continue to rely on God and to be at peace with where I am. And I think God will continue to direct us, both my wife and I, in a life for Him, and have fun and enjoy it to its fullest.
All right, let's thank Scotty for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. 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 Thank you.
In Jude, we find him writing in verse 3, I wanted to write of our common salvation, but he said, I realized it was necessary for me to write to you of the faith which was once delivered to the saints. It's very specific in Greek. It was delivered once for all. We do not have an evolving gospel that needs to be updated with the latest theories of psychology and sociology and legality, but we have the faith which once for all was delivered to the saints. It saved people in the first century. It saves people in the 21st century.